and welcome to my channel. So I will be showing you knitting and crochet tutorials and techniques, and I will also be putting out some beginner patterns. I have one already out on my blog for crochet. Now this week's video is going to be me showing you what you need and the tools you need when you are starting to knit so that you are well prepared. So without further ado, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want more videos like this and if you want to learn how to knit and crochet along with me. I'll bring us to the table. Okay, now I know this looks like a lot, and also apologies for my camera angle. It is a bit sideways because I couldn't get a proper front-on view, but that won't affect it much. Now, this looks like a hell of a lot, but really all a beginning knitter needs is a pair of straight needles. Do not go with plastic. I am saying this now, do not go with plastic. Every beginner goes with plastic and then they end up stopping. I went with plastic and I stopped for 2 years. Go with metal. Go with metal or go with wooden, depending on your wool. I will get into that in another video, the wool types and needle types. But this is all that I have collected because I've been doing knitting and crochet for about 12 years now. A beginner, they only need straight needles. Now it's not the right size of yarn, but they need yarn. Okay, so let's go through what's on this table, because even having this as a beginner will set you up for success. So first off, we have 3 types of needles. We have the straight needles. So they're used mainly for working things flat, like scarves or some hat patterns, or as beginners, toys, anything like that. That's one of the things that we use. Next thing, the next set of needles that we have are DPNs or double pointed needles. They usually come in a set of 4 or a set of 5. These are used for making things that are in the round. So socks, hats, gloves. You can use them for a lot of different things. I'm actually currently making a set of gloves with mine that are metal, but I am going to be doing a wine bottle cozy for the holiday seasons, and I'll more than likely be, for the knitted version, be using double pointeds. So there, the second pair of needles is double pointeds. DPNs or double pointed needles. The next, and ironically my favorite, even though I have plenty of pairs of the other 2, is circulars. Now everyone has their own what they like of needle types and everything else, and length. But circular needles are the exact same as straights and the exact same as double pointed. You can knit in the round of them, so you can make hats, you can make socks, you can make anything that needs to be knit in a continuous tube. Fair Isle patterns, for example. But you can also knit flat, so you can still knit scarves, you can knit shawls, you can knit jumpers. Because of the cable, unlike straight needles, not all of the weight is going to be continuously on your arm when you're knitting or on the needle. That sounded loud. Ow. Okay, so that's the 3 types of needles. Next, we'll move on to, as I call them, accessories. Now, I will be showing you how to do crochet as well in more tutorials and videos. But one thing that you should always have when you are knitting, or in your project bag, or just in your general craft room, not everyone has a craft room, but I do, is a crochet hook. This can help you fix mistakes like dropped stitches. It can also help you add on tassels and everything else after you've finished the project. Apologies for my stuttering as well. So that is one of the things you need. I will be showing you how to crochet as well, and the tools that you will need for crochet in the next video. And then after that is knitting tutorial and crochet tutorial on how to actually get started. Okay, the next thing, stitch holders, the best things. Now, for the likes of jumpers, and I actually have a jumper here right beside me, hence why I don't have more stitch markers. I'm using stitch holders, sorry, not stitch marker. I'm using stitch holders for the sleeves while I work on the body. There's a bit of wool on it. And I'm using a stitch holder on this side for the sleeves. I am also using stitch markers, which I'll show you now in a minute, and I'm using circular needles. So, what are stitch holders? They're exactly as it says on the tin. Stitch holders, are for keeping your stitches live and active while you're not working them. So let's say for toys, because a lot of beginners will do toys. I did toys as well. For toys like, let's say, teddy bears, when you're doing the body, you may have in the patterns that I use, and I will show you that pattern book at the end, you will have 8 stitches, I think, on your needle, worked up, continuing to work on, and you will have 8 stitches again on a stitch holder to come back to layer. And same with the sleeves on that jumper that I showed you. I will be coming back to the arms when I've finished the body. So that is a stitch holder for you. Okay, our next thing. Blocking pins. Now, blocking pins, unlike these pins here, are for when you have finished a project and it is time to start blocking. I will explain blocking in a future video because even I had trouble understanding it when I started knitting. Blocking, to basically cut it short, let's take that jumper, or we'll take a granny square, crochet granny square, or any piece of clothing or shawls or whatever. You will tack it down, you'll wet it first, tack it down, leave it to dry, and then that's it blocked. Just means that it is structured in the way that you want. So that is the blocking needles. Okay, our next part is, we're on needles, so I might as well go with the other needles. So these are just plastic tip needles. I don't want to spill any, and I just did. These will mainly be used for sewing parts onto a knitted item or a crocheted item. So for example, in a reel that I just posted onto my Instagram and TikTok, I had a crochet tree plush. With that, there was arms and there was flowers sewn on. Now, with that, you can see clearly that I have one of these on the flower, but that was for the flower to stand out. You would take these onto the side. Do I have anything I can show? I don't think so. No, I don't. But you would take these onto the side or onto the piece that you are attaching, and they will hold it while you are sewing. You will remove them as you come across them. So these are the little plastic head needles. Apologies for all my stuttering. I sometimes get confused when I'm trying to talk, and I don't do this on script. So it's off the top of my head, really. Okay, our next thing, the lovely and intricate cable needles. You can probably tell by the sound of my voice that I do not like working with these or working with cables. So cables are what you would see in traditional Irish Aran sweaters. They're the little, let's say, lions. I don't have any examples on me. I need to actually make some. But they're little lions. I'll just show you the sweater again to give you an idea. So, across an iron jumper, you will have little parts of knitting that will be raised that kind of go in a little spiral motion down along, and they will be evenly placed. That is cabling. Again, I apologize that I do not have any examples for you. But cable needles are what you use to hold the stitches when you are cabling. So, let's say a knit for back or a knit front forward. For the knit front back, you will knit 2 stitches off your needle. No, sorry. You will hold 2 stitches on the cable needle and you will hold it to the back of your work. you will knit the next 2 stitches off of the knitting needle you've been using, and then you will knit the 2 stitches from the cable needle. Again, I haven't done cabling in a while, so I do sometimes get confused with that. But that's cable needles for you. Now, the next thing that any beginner should really have, especially if they're going, again, with the plastic needles, because the sizes will tend to rub off. A knitting needle gauge, and it also helps for gauge swatches as well. This is the perfect type to get because of the gauge swatch. Because doing gauge is extremely important for more projects that need accuracy, like jumpers, socks, etc. Excuse me. But the knitting needle gauge, I'll just bring it a bit closer to the camera so it can be seen. The knitting needle gauge tells you the sizes of the needles. So let me get my string needles, which I know are size 4.5. So I will go to size 4. I will try and put it in. It doesn't fit. I'll go to size 5. It'll fit too easy. You can see that there's a bit of a gap. See that? There's a bit of a gap. I go to size 4.5 and it fits exactly. So that will tell me if this little marking of the size is ever to rub off, what size that the needle is. Every beginner and everyone who is more experienced with knitting definitely should have one of these in their craft bag. That is what I will always say. Okay, on to our next. We have embroidery thread. Now, you can use spare yarn, but embroidery thread is great for sewing parts of your project together. Let's say you're doing a hat worked flat, so you have to sew up the seam of it, or you're doing a patchwork project, maybe a patchwork blanket, patchwork jumper, whatever, and you need to sew it. You can use yarn, but embroidery thread is always good, as it will more than likely not be seen if you use the same color as your project. You can get them in a variety of colors, and you can also split the yarn itself, well, the thread, sorry, into different sections. So for cross stitch, you might only use 2 strands. For sewing in ends or sewing up projects, you may use the whole thing. So that's embroidery thread. I'll try and go quickly now because I don't want this video to be too long. Okay, our next thing, the one I got confused with earlier on, is stitch markers, which I have on that jumper as well. You can mark the start of rows, or rounds. You can mark where you will increase, decrease in a project. You can also use them to keep an eye on your progress. You can get progress markers as well, but if you want to go cheap, use stitch markers. You can put them along your project, and when you're done knitting that project for the day, look back, see where you started off, see how much you did. You can also use them, as I said, to mark increases and decreases, like I did with the jumper, or what I'm currently doing with the stitch markers on the jumper at the minute. I have my start of round stitch marker, and I also have, because it's now on 2 sides, the front and the back. This yellow stitch marker here tells me exactly where the back ends and front starts. This one also tells me where the front ends and the back starts, but I also know that this one is the start of my round. Okay, our next thing, most obvious, darning needles. They are larger tip needles. You can use sewing needles as well if you are using the thread, but they are larger tip needles that you can thread in yarn. Same yarn that you are using to work a project, as long as it's thin enough to go in, you can thread in yarn and you can sew up the project using the same yarn. So if I was doing the back and front of that sweater worked flat, I would have to sew the sides together, and I would use the same yarn, and I would use a darning needle. So I don't really need to explain those, because no one is stupid. We all know what sewing needles are. Even if we're not crafters, we've all seen them. Okay, our next thing is needle stoppers. So needle stoppers, whether you're using circular needles or you're using straight needles, are helpful if you have a project with a lot of stitches. So what you would do is, let's say you're putting a project down and the project has more stitches than the width of this needle. Let's, for example, you don't want any stitches to fall off, of course. So you'll just place that onto the end of the needle. It will stop any stitches coming off, and unless there's obviously force put onto it, it won't come off. Now, I did push it there, but it won't come off. So it will keep the stitches on your needles, making you not have to worry about it. Okay, next is tape measure. A lot of patterns may tell you, especially with clothing, baby clothing, adult jumpers, everything, will say, oh, continue knitting in stockinette stitch or knit and purl until it measures 5.5 inches. So where's 5.5 inches? It's right here. So continue knitting, you're starting here until it's 5.5 inches. And measuring tape, I use the retractable one. I keep this in my craft bag all the time whenever I am doing any project or making a new item or a new product for my website. I will use this one because it retracts. It retracts. So it is a lot easier, unlike this that tangles and gets caught up and everything else. For measurements, for gauge, you will use a tape measure. You will also use the tape measure when you are working out, let's say you're making patterns and you want to know how long did I knit that sleeve compared to this one and everything else like that. So you will use the tape measure a lot while you are doing knitting and crochet. I can see a bit of Christmas yarn in the corner of my screen. It's not that time of year yet, but I think that's like attached to some jumper that's lying on the window. So retractable tape measure, the exact same. Inches and centimeters, it just retracts. This is the one that you go with. I have 2 of the normal ones and I have 1 of these. This is the one you go with. This is the easier one. Okay, we are on to our last 2 things. So, we all know the top of hats have them little fluffy balls, the Pom Poms. Unless you want to use cardboard, which will save you money, yes, but it's always handy to have these things in your knitting supplies or your craft bag. You can get things to make the actual Pom Poms. And it is just simple and easy. I won't do it now because the video is running long, but it is simple and easy. You wrap the yarn around, close the 2 of them. You wrap the yarn around both, by the way. Close the 2 of them, lock the 2 of them, and then in here you will insert your scissors, which I actually forgot to put one out, but you do need a scissors as well. And cut around, tie a little bit of spare yarn in the middle, take them off, and you have your pom pom. So that is the pom pom makers, as I call them. Now I have something over on my sewing table that I will get in a second because it's another piece that you will need. Well, you don't necessarily need it as a beginner, but you will need it if you're making any toys and stuff like that. But I will go on to our next one first. So, we have the little bobbins. I do not use these because I don't do intarsia, which is a colorwork technique. I can do it, I just don't. I never have the need to do it. But these are for making separate little, let's say, balls of yarn in the same color or in different colors for blocked color work or intarsia. Now, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, so apologies. You will have, with entire ship, one part of knitting, and the middle part of the knitting, let's say, if you're doing just a square of colour, and the other part of knitting. Now, these two side parts are going to be the same colour, but you cannot carry yarn the entire way across a massive piece of colour work. So you have to have one ball of the same yarn for this side, one for this side, and your contrasting colour or the yarn you're doing the colour work in the middle for. You will put the yarn onto 3 of these, let's say, for that example. You will have, these will all be not working on your needles, but they will all be attached to the working on your needles at all times as you're using them. You'll have one ball of yarn over here attached to your work in progress on the needles, one ball in the middle, let's say, for the colour work, and another one on this side, same colour as the left, for the other side of the work. Okay, so that is that. That is all of these that I've showed you for what you need. I will get 2 extra things, and then I will show you my very first pattern book that I got and that I started with. So give me 2 secs while I run over and grab my other piece that I need to show you. Alright. Now, what are these? I've left the backings for them over on the table because I don't really need to show you the backings. These are safety eyes. So if you're a beginner, you may start doing toys or, you know, little things that you want to make cute, like the pie that I showed in my latest reel that you can add a little face onto. You can sew on eyes as well, and it is obviously safer for kids to sew on eyes if you're giving them to a young child. But safety eyes are just a cute little add-on that you can use for any toy making projects that you're doing, be it robots, teddy bears, little animals, little people, leprechauns like I did for Paddy's Day last year. So that is one of the last 2 things I'm showing you. And the next thing that you will need for a lot of projects as a beginner, if you're doing toys or household items, anything like that. And I just got 2 new bags of it because I really needed it. Stuffing! Toy stuffing or fiber fill stuffing. Polyester stuffing as well you can also get. Just take a little bit out. Obviously, we all know what stuffing is for. It says in the name, you stuff each item that you need to get to a correct size or whatever. Or for toys, you will stuff the body of, let's say, a bear and the head or whatever. So I don't really need to explain this. We know what stuffing is, but it is something that a beginner should at least get a bag or 2 of, or a box of, depending on where you can shop. Here in Ireland, we don't have Michael's or Joanne's or anything like that, so I can just get these little bags for $7.50, and they are 300 gram, and there's a lot of stuffing in them, so they come very much in handy. Okay, as our little bonus for today, there's a little stitch marker. I'll get it later. For our little bonus today, I will show you the very first craft book, pattern book that I picked up when I started, after I made my first scarf. Knitted bears with 20 different patterns. Now, I won't show you the pattern, but I will show you a few of the pictures of the bears. Just because I don't want to infringe on anyone's privacy or anything like that. I've tried to make this one and I've never got around to finishing it when I first started, but I will be doing this for Halloween this year. I'll actually be starting to make it once I release my new product. I'm filming this on Friday, by the way, so my product is coming out today, my new product for my website. The little groom bear. You can see, I'll hold it away so it's not really noticeable or too readable, but you can see they have the materials, they have the instructions, the needles, the pattern to make the clothing. At the start of the book, they have the pattern to make each doll. They also some have little charts. The little granny bear, I've tried to do that one with myself before with its little thing of knitting. There's some very cute bears. Panda bear, little hiker bear. I wonder, does that have iron? No, it doesn't. I thought that had a little bit of iron I could just show you. So they have some cute little, the little paper mache flowers, but you could knit or crochet some flowers as well to go with that. They have some great stuff. I also, with this type of book, the 20 to make, got my first crochet book for Granny Squares. I've since got a bigger book that has hundreds of Granny Squares in it. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. Apologies that it ran a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but a detailed explanation of everything you need is better than a short one. You can see behind me two of the products that I've made with safety eyes and everything else, toy stuffing. So everything I've showed you can go into the products. I used yarn for the mount instead of the sewing thread, but as I said, you can use the embroidery thread as well. So, if you want to keep updated on my craft videos for knitting tutorials, beginner patterns, and little knitting, crochet, and a few cross stitch tips and tricks, then make sure to subscribe, click the notification bell, click the like button, so that my videos can get a little bit of a boost and reach other people. And make sure to tune back in next Saturday when I will be going over what we need as a beginner. Now, I've been doing it 12 years, but as a beginner, what you need for crochet. The week after, I will be showing you how to cast on. I'll be showing you 3 different ways of casting on with knitting. And the week after, I'll be showing you how to start off with crochet. So it's going to switch week by week between knitting and crochet. Alright guys, remember, happy crafting, and I'll see you next time. Bye!